I've always said that if something is well designed, it will be well built.
Yeah.
If it's badly designed, you cannot expect a builder to try and fix something that was fundamentally flawed in the first place.
Yeah. G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Level Up. We are back in the shed and we're actually melting today. It's about 37 degrees outside, but we've got the fans going. We're going to see how we go, but got an absolutely fantastic guest for you today. This woman has done everything. She's a builder, interior designer. She's worked overseas, studied overseas, come to Australia, does cabinet making, like you name it. Really involved in the industry and doing incredible things, as well as actually putting out her own magazine. So huge warm welcome to Duayne Henshall.
Thanks, Duayne.
How are you? We got, took me a few cuts with the name, yeah. But how are you going?
Really good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks very much for coming down from Noosa this afternoon and having a chat to us.
In a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
On top of everything else.
Yeah, well, it's just crazy weather, isn't it?
It's nuts, absolutely nuts.
Yeah. So do I just tell us a little bit about your background? So you...
well, I'm from England, but I've been in Australia now, well, almost all my adult life. So I studied interior design in England. I was one of these kids, amazingly, and I'm very lucky that I was. When I was about 5, I knew I wanted to be a designer.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything about interior design, of course. But when I was about 7 or 8, my sister, who's older than me, told me, she's a bit bossy, that we had to design our own houses. So I actually started to design this house, and I remember designing it with no corridors, no hallways, because I was terrified of great long hallways. So I designed this house so that all of the rooms are interlocking, and this is, I guess, pretty innovative for a 7 or 8-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But that was the first thing that started me on actually, built environment rather than, drawing pictures of dresses and dollies and stuff like that.
Is there any of your family in the industry?
No, but both my parents are scientists.
Right.
But my dad, who's a research scientist, is also an opera singer. My mum, who's a biologist, she illustrated, those black pen and ink drawings that they do, the sections through cells and stuff like that.
Yep.
She illustrated 2 of the textbooks that she wrote. So she's a really talented artist. So between the opera and the art, they produced 3 artistic daughters. So my oldest sister has got a PhD in fine art, and my other sister, my middle sister, is an English lecturer, but she also makes jewellery and stuff like that. So
very talented
We're
family.
Very unscientific.
So obviously you grew up and you still loved it, and then you studied in
Liverpool.
Yeah.
In England. Yeah, I'm from Essex, but I went up to the other side of the country.
Yeah, and you studied interior design?
Yep. Yeah, so you start off, like most art courses, you start off with foundation studies, so you do a lot of mixed media and, even things like fiberglassing and stuff like that, just so that you get the vibe.
Yeah.
Life drawing, all of that sort of gizmo. And then the last 2.5 years is that you specialise in things like building office practice and history of interior design, which that has got its pluses in England, because there's history in, furniture right from the sort of 15th century onwards.
Yeah.
You can see living examples of what we were studying, whereas in Australia you don't have that advantage.
There's not a huge amount of
no, there's not many
Tudor
buildings in Australia.
So one thing that really fascinates me is you then went that extra step and you got qualified as a builder.
Yeah, I think that was sort of not forced upon me, but it was a realisation that I had that if I was going to be able to project manage my jobs, my projects for my clients, I had to be a builder. And I didn't want any other Wally to come along and start telling me what to do. So I had no choice, and I studied through in HIA.
So did you do your builder's license once you got to Australia?
Yes. Yeah, I did it in South Brisbane.
Yeah.
They were absolutely brilliant. There were 28 guys in the class with me. I was the only female at the time.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying, and I had to drive up and down from Noosa. I was running the factory and the studio and had the kids at school. My hair started falling out. I went blind. I went down to 45 kilos. It was just a disaster. And then we had to do all Saturdays, all Sundays once a month as well, just to try and cram it. But even after the whole course was finished, it took me 8 months after that to finish all the assignments. It was pretty hectic.
Geez, you're committed.
Well, I thought at one point there's no way I can do this, but then I thought if I stop now, I will never be able to look myself in the face again. So it was perseverance, not desire.
Do you think that, because we have a process in our business now called the PAC process where, and we teach it in Live Like Build, so I get paid as a consultant to help through all the pre-planning stages up until signing a building contract.
Yeah.
And so I go to all the design meetings, whether it's interior design or architects or whatever, but I believe it's making me a far better builder, having a better understanding for why design is done the way it's done.
Yes, exactly.
Do you feel that you've become a better designer because you understand more about the building?
Yes, I definitely do. And I think that's, I think that the attitude of builders, and this is being, a bit arrogant, saying that it's generally understood that builders do not agree often with what an architect or a building designer or an interior designer is asking them to do.
Yeah.
But, realistically, I push my clients out of their comfort zone. We also have to push builders out of their comfort zone. If a builder had his way, he would just be building, 2-bedroom,
I think so much of that comes, I agree 100% with you, and I feel that, and now, over the last sort of 5 to 6 years or 7 years, developing the systems and processes in our business, getting more involved in all that sort of contract part of the job.
Yeah.
It's really opened my mind up to know more. But the other thing that it's really taught me is it's really made it clear to me why I used to have so many issues and why I used to butt heads with designers.
Yeah.
And I think so many builders end up in this position because a lot of the time, a builder's getting a set of drawings.
Yeah.
They may not have even met a client, or they may not have even met the designer. They get emailed the plans, hey, can you give us a price on this? You're basically flying blind. You're trying to price what's on the drawings, but you haven't been involved in all those conversations, or you don't understand the background of why it's got to where it is. And if it happens and something hasn't been translated onto the paper that the client is expecting, then the builder wins the job, gets to site.
Okay, this comes down to our fundamental that we talked about before we started. Communication.
Yeah. The
communication is the thing that is so sadly lacking in a lot of industries, but particularly in ours, because what we're dealing with, if we're talking about residential design, we're just dealing with people's lives.
Yeah.
Literally their lives, because what we build and what we deliver is going to affect their daily life, their daily comfort, their family interaction, all of those things. But, I've always said that if something is well designed, it will be well built.
Yeah.
If it's badly designed, you cannot expect a builder to try and fix something that was fundamentally flawed in the first place.
Yeah.
So the collaboration between a designer and a builder, in my opinion, is so underestimated. But if we did that right from the start for every job, we would have such a much better outcome for everybody involved. And I think also having that interaction from the beginning, it starts the communication process in the right way, because the client feels much more well looked after.
Yeah.
They feel at ease. They understand that the interior designer or the architect or building designer and the builder have got a synergistic attitude to how they're going to put this together for them, the client.
It's building relationships,
It's a building relationship.
And I think
also, just to put one little plug in for females, is that I think that female builders they have such a better bedside manner.
Oh, 100%.
Because they come more from an empathetic point of view to what it is that, happy family life is all about. Where you need to plug a socket in for a kid's, charging station. Where the kettle should be placed, all of those things that sound so stupid, but realistically, people can end up hating a house because there's a PowerPoint in the wrong place, and I've seen that before.
100%. Yeah. It just makes so much sense to do, and we've talked about this a little bit. I know I wouldn't be where I am in my building business in Live Like Build without the females I have around me. I think females are overlooked in so many industries, not just ours. And I don't know what it is. But
I think
a bit
also
old-fashioned.
I understand that about females being overlooked, but the other issue that we've got to deal with, which is, not the elephant in the room, but the thing that is absolutely acknowledged and understood, is it is a man's world.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that if the females that are coming in understand that before they even get their boots on, and they understand that they're in a territory that is different to what they would expect people to behave, to talk like, and so forth. If they've got that understanding to start with, then they're not going to be feeling browbeaten and challenged constantly and having to try and prove themselves, by being macho about themselves, because they understand that this is how it is. But equally, the men in the industry have to understand that women are coming from a different angle.
Yeah.
But their value cannot be underestimated. As
It's
far
huge.
as client
It's massive.
communication, excellent design skills, and also this balancing of so we may not be able to do it this way, but have we considered doing it that way? And a lot of, I hate to say it, old school builders, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of communication with clients and architects and designers and building designers collapse, because they cannot get somebody to see another point of view. And I've said to my team at work, I'm sitting here looking at you, Shay's over there looking at you, he can't see what I'm seeing, but it's the same person, he's in the same spot, it's just a different perspective.
Yeah.
And if you look at it that way, it makes life a hell of a lot easier to understand.
I think before we started recording today, we were having a bit of a conversation. I think this comes back to it. I think because so many builders, I believe so many builders miss a golden opportunity. Like, a lot of clients quite often call a builder, say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this renovation or whatever it may be. And a builder will say, oh, I can't help you, come back to me when you get a design. And they've missed an opportunity to say, hey, look, I know this designer, I know this interior designer, let's collaborate and start a team. We'll all have a meeting together.
Yeah.
And they miss out on that journey from initial design brief.
I think that's changing, thank goodness. And again, like any revolution, which is what we were talking about before, there has to be a transition period. And the transition period that we're in now, I mean, when I was doing my builder's license, I don't know, but it was well less than 1,000 female builders in Australia. Now I believe it's a hell of a lot more, and it should be.
Yeah.
But that part of that transition into more of a multi-gender based society, which is really what we're in, or our community, we're going to have stumbling blocks like this, that people are not going to be able to listen. So unfortunately, the older ones, the ones that are more set in their ways, as they fall away, as they retire or start to understand a different point of view, you'll see that there'll be an acceleration in how we move forward.
And that is a huge part of why I do this podcast. It's getting these stories out there so that people in the industry that are either they're struggling in business now, or they're coming into the business, or whatever it may be, or they're thinking about, they might still be at school.
Yeah.
But creating a new industry where collaboration is key, communication is key.
Yeah.
I just feel like you get such a better project and a better business and probably more profitable businesses when you have a female's perspective in it.
Well, I think, regardless of gender, one of the things about communication, which is also a big issue for us all, and I say this constantly to my team, is when I was doing my builder's license, one of our lecturers, the first words that came out of his mouth, it was, quantity surveying or something that we were doing. It was the first lecture he gave us, and his opening statement was, go into every contract as though you're going to court. And I thought, bloody hell, what a rotten thing to say is that? And it's true, because if you document everything that you've said, because this is another thing where builders' relationships with clients can break down, and designers and builders and, architects, a whole lot, is because they said, but you said. And then you say, no, my understanding of that conversation was completely different, or my interpretation or my recollection of. All of those are going to get you in trouble. Every time,
it's black and white.
Every time you say something, it takes you 5 seconds to just say, just confirming that what we said on the phone was blah.
Yeah.
And then you've covered yourself. And
meeting
I think
minutes.
that is where a lot of builders fall down because, you know, it's a classic, you know, pencil on a piece of board. The board gets shoved into a wall and you never see it again. And that was his only evidence that he had a conversation.
Yeah, writes it on a sheet of bracing
You can't work that way.
The plaster goes up and you can't see it ever again.
That's it.
But and yeah, again, I agree 100%. Like we're huge on meeting minutes. Like whether it's through the design stage and like we really push for weekly site meetings with our client. Every meeting gets followed up with meeting minutes, and it actually like it doesn't have to be that hard. I think a lot of builders and trades, designers, architects, like they're so snowed under in trying to keep their head above water, remain profitable.
Yeah.
And all this stuff seems like it's just they don't have enough time. But things like meeting minutes, I do them on my voice memo on my iPhone. Yeah. Like as soon as I get in my truck, I do a voice memo. I say, hey, this is the date, this is the job, this is who attended the meeting. I send it through to my wife.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I understand that process. But the other thing about it is that, you know, looking at the effective use of time is that, you know, a builder quite rightly can say, I haven't got time for this, I've got to, you know, just get on with the job. But the reality is that when something does go wrong, and invariably it does, it takes you 10 hours to work out something that if you'd written it down it would have taken you 10 minutes. So if you extrapolate that into a court case or something terrible, you know, had you done those things all of those, you know, hours or weeks before, because, you know, very often builders will have more than one project on at once. How are you supposed to remember what you said to Mrs. Jones 15 months ago?
Oh, it's
not possible.
But I think it's, a lot of it in our industry, like we spoke about before, there's so many people that are just incredibly good at their craft, but when it comes to the business side of things, it really falls over.
And unfortunately, most people, I'm not just talking about builders now, I'm talking about anybody that goes into their own business, including me, thought that they were really clever at something and that they could turn it into a business. I did not know what a GP meant. I was asked by an accountant what was my GP, and I told him my doctor's name. That's how. Well, I've been in business for 7 years when I said that, so you can imagine how the hell I got through 7 years. I don't know. But there is such a naivety in people thinking that they're very, very good at one thing, and that they're going to, extol their virtues to the whole world. And then 5 years down the track, they think, "What the hell have I done?" Because I don't know enough.
I love that you just told us that, because I think to become a better person, business, wife, partner, whatever it may be, you've got to be vulnerable, and you've got to be able to tell stories like that. Because
I've got a few like that.
Well, keep them coming, because that's what's going to help our industry, because I feel like so many people, across our industry and other industries, they don't improve because they don't be vulnerable and they don't accept that they might not know things or put their hand up and ask questions.
Well, I think that, the thing about being vulnerable and feeling vulnerable, they're two different things. I think I was naive and stupid, and that therefore came the vulnerability. But, people will insecure insecure and vulnerable if they're challenged, and this is again comes the sort of the alpha male kind of attitude, and especially builders, they have to be, because builders are running hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of somebody else's money to produce something. You have to be the one that's in charge and tell people off and do all of that sort of stuff. But if you're being challenged constantly, you're going to start getting your shackles up, or your hackles, shackles, whatever.
So where did you? So did you? You didn't just go straight and work for yourself? Like, did you work for other companies?
When I first was an interior designer, When I left college, I amazingly, because back in the day you were allowed to put your age up or tell anybody your age. I put my age up 4 years. So because back in the day they were allowed to say what age group they wanted, and they wanted to have an interior designer aged between 21 and 25. Well, I was nowhere near that, so I put my age up because I actually went to college when I was much younger than I was supposed to. So when I got this job, I was 4 years older than I really am. And then after 3 months I was promoted to export designer. So this company at the time was the biggest kitchen manufacturer in the world. It's based in Liverpool, and in our factory now we would produce, depends on the type of work, but we probably produce between 5 and 8 kitchens a week, depending on what else we're doing. This company that I work for produce 12,000 kitchens a week.
Holy shit.
And they also had showrooms and exhibitions all around the world. So after 3 months, I was promoted to their export designer. So I was designing showrooms and exhibitions in the Far East, Canada, North Africa, and also designing all of the cabinetry for the Middle East private residences, so sheikhs' palaces and stuff like that. So when the sheikhs would come over to discuss all of this stuff, I'd be entertaining them, taking them out for lunch and all that sort of stuff, as well as trying to get the behind the scenes so that I could understand how I could design this stuff for them.
4 years younger than what you actually
which was cool. It was very but you know, I went out with my husband for 2 years before I told him how old I was. I was too scared to tell him. He was thrilled.
So when you came to
Australia, I was only coming out here for a year. I met my husband at Gatwick Airport, and I didn't know he was my husband at the point. And so I ended up moving to Melbourne, which is where he is from, and I worked for a group of architects. And that was another male-dominated industry, very much still is.
Yeah.
And when I was export designer, I was allowed to use any equipment, you know, pens, special papers, whatever. I could do what I liked because I was up there.
Yeah.
And when I've worked for the group of architects in Melbourne, they gave me some butter paper, which is, you know, the off a roll.
Gave
and
you
I was
rations
like,
to work with.
what the hell is this? So it was very much you're down there, mate.
Yeah.
Starting off in a new country, I knew that I had to do that. So that was very good learning for me. Not because I had an ego about it at all. It's just that I realised that if you're starting off in a new country, as a young person and relatively new career, I'd only been working as a designer for 2 years, I had to start from scratch and work my way up. And then
so when did you feel that you had to go out on your own?
Well, I didn't actually feel it. It was that was sort of forced on me as well, in a way, is that my husband was working away a lot. We had 2 tiny babies, and we were just never going to make ends meet. And so there was an ad for a job for somebody that had marketing and or interior design experience, and I had both. So I applied for the job, and within a week I realised it was a shonky company. I didn't want to know anything about it, but my husband had resigned from his job and had the kids and the mortgage. And it was one of my best friends. She said, "You've got to go out on your own." And I said, "I can't." And, you know, tears springing off my cheeks. "I can't do this. I cannot do it." She said, "Yes, you can." I said, I have no clients. You'll get them. I've got no staff. You can hire them.
Yeah.
I've got no premises. My husband will find you something, you know. And it all happened within 2 weeks. It was bam, bam, bam like that. And
so was that in Melbourne?
No, it's here in Noosa.
Yeah.
Where are we? In Noosa, up there.
So you moved from Melbourne up to there, and then jumped straight in the deep end and started your own practice?
Yeah, it's huge and very, very stressful. And, you know, we didn't have any money, so we had to borrow against the mortgage. So we went from a relatively small mortgage to a big mortgage on a relatively small house.
Yeah.
So we were totally overgeared. And then within 3 years, we had an overdraft that was double the mortgage that we increased to.
Yeah.
So there were times there that I luckily had a really lovely guy who would phone me every morning, and he'd say, "I just want you to get through till lunchtime, and I'll ring you after lunch to see how you're going." That's how tight it was.
Was this a bank manager?
No, it was just he was just like a business mentor, but a fantastic bloke, and he really got me through that. Bank manager, no, they didn't want to know about it. Now they're all over me. But no, not helpful at all, bank managers back in the day.
Yeah.
But now I've got a fantastic one. He thinks I'm great.
It is it is a stressful point for anybody starting a business, but you've just got to do it, don't you? And you've got to believe in yourself. I think that's the biggest part.
Well, I think that, you know, that's a hard one as well, as believing in yourself. I don't know if I've ever actually believed in myself. And I think that I admire people that do. I've got fantastic friends that absolutely admire themselves for what they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
But I've constantly questioned what I'm doing. Am I good enough? Am I an imposter? All of those things.
Even now?
Yep. And it's not something that, you know, I sort of spill my guts about, because you learn to live with that. But it is a constant challenge to think, is this the last job I'm going to get? You know, have I done the right thing? You know, do they still like me? Was this the best design outcome? You know, did I all of those questions.
I find
just
this really
fly
fascinating because I've
Yeah.
so we need to touch on your book. So you've sent me a couple of Duayne's released her a magazine. It's absolutely fantastic. I can't believe how well
Duayne.
travelled you are.
Yeah.
But I find that fascinating that you doubt yourself, but like you look at that book and the work you do and the jobs you've done, the places you've been, and like it's fantastic.
Well, that's fantastic for you to say that. I think talking about travel, there are a lot of flamboyant decorators. So I think there's a very misconception about decorators and designers for a start.
Yeah.
A designer is tertiary trained, drafting, all that sort of stuff, building techniques, all of that sort of thing. A decorator is somebody that will go into a built environment and trick it up like beautifully.
Fluffy
and there are
pillows.
Well, that's an awful thing to say, but there are some brilliant decorators around, really brilliant. But decorators and designers, a bit like saying that a bookkeeper is an accountant. You can't say a decorator is a designer, but a lot of people do say that they are, which really gets me.
Yeah, like a decorator comes in and furnishes.
Yeah, furnishes, but we do decorate because it's a very lucrative part of the business.
Yeah.
But with the travel side is for me to get a real understanding of because our clients are up there. All of our clients, our A-list clients, if you like, they're well travelled. They're highly educated. They're usually self-made. They don't suffer fools. They don't think anything with spending $500 on a bottle of wine at lunchtime. Those sorts of people.
Yeah.
But the good thing about them is that they recognise that they are not specialists in every field, including building and design. And so that's why they are happy and trusting of me to help them through this, this adventure.
So you see your travel not only as you getting to experience the world, but you're actually doing it as part of your business.
It's a responsibility to the clients, because if they have got experiences of all around the world, they're going to draw on that on their own likes and dislikes in how they design their house, how they live in their house. And for me to sort of live in the back streets of nowhere and have no understanding of what they've experienced, how am I supposed to translate that into reality for them? And so to me, it sounds ridiculous, but travel is mandatory in my opinion.
I think that is I think that is no different to, like, I think everybody should do it. Like we did a trip to Melbourne last week with Amelia and I. We went
Jet
down
setter.
No, but just like we went and saw some other builders down there. So I've recently done my passive house course because I want to get more educated on building techniques and we'll definitely get into it because we touched before on like prefabricated stuff. I think definitely Australia is just so far behind the eight ball with that sort of thing. But
so sad.
Just like, to me, like years ago, I would have just seen that as a silly expense or something I couldn't afford, and I couldn't really see the value in it. But like, from spending 4 days down there last week, meeting 3 other builders that do passive homes, going to timber sawmills and manufacturing plants, talking to other people in the industry, understanding why something's made, how it's made, it makes me a better builder. So that when I come back here to Queensland, now that we're starting to get interest in passive homes, I am educating myself so that I know more about it, so that I can, when clients are asking me questions, I think it's really valuable that you put time, effort, energy, money into traveling the world and experiencing, like having those experiences. So like you said, you can translate that through to drawings, because to me that is a massive value add to your clients.
Well, I thanks for saying that, Duayne. I do, but I also think that, this is what's so sad about, where the building industry is not stuck, it's moving forward, but at a glacial pace, is that, when I first came to Australia, well over 30 years ago, one of the first conferences I ever went to in Melbourne was a conference on insulation. Now, all of the speakers were from Europe. They were all talking about, what they would do for insulation in Australia is they'd shove some fluff in your roof and Bob's your uncle. But not realising that all of the heat and the cold are coming in through massive glass windows, which we don't have in Europe. So that you're behind the eight ball on that one straight away. And then they, underfloor heating, I'd never heard of it. In-wall insulation, never heard of it.
Yeah.
Even if you've got in walls, what are you doing with the glazing? Double glazing, never heard of it.
Yeah.
All of these things. So I've always said that if you can build for the cold, you will protect yourself from the heat. And the other worrying thing is that most of Australia is in a temperate climate, not in a hot one.
Yeah.
So we're building all these huge houses with massive glass windows and everything with very little insulation, you know, just to code or regulation.
Yeah.
And in actual fact,
A very, very low code.
They're not built to suit the climate that we're living in.
Yeah.
And they're not going to protect you from the heat.
Yeah.
They're not passive. They're not energy efficient. And they're too bloody big. So what are we doing?
Yeah, I love that you just said that. So and so if like the more I educate myself, and I feel like you're the same, like the more I educate myself, the more I learn, I'm actually changing my business, the way we market, the clients we attract, because I don't want to be building huge mansions that aren't efficient, aren't sustainable, that are contributing towards climate change and all those sorts of things. And our building codes have a lot to be said for, like they're so minimal.
Well, our building code, our regulations, the other thing that really bugs me about this country, we've got 25 million people here. In England we've got 65 million, so almost 3 times the size. We've got one central government, and then we've got local government, local council government, council laws. Here we've got council, state, federal, everybody's fighting against each other. There's not a collaborative force. I'm registered in Queensland as a builder. What if I got a job in Kingscliff? Can't do it. This is the most ridiculous thing. So unless somebody bowlessly gets a grip on this place and says, let's get some regulations that are Australia-wide, that suit low cost energy efficient housing, as well as your mansions if you want to build those things, so that there is, but those regulations are going to have to come from the industry within. But the thing about it is that the people that usually are in our industry bodies are so far removed from the hands-on that they've either forgotten or they haven't had the experience to tell the bureaucrats how to do it. So we're in a cleft stick.
Yeah.
You know,
it is. It's so old-fashioned. I think there's sometimes I feel like the industry just needs a massive clean out.
It does.
And a lot of new blood brought in, but
I think also that the thoughts of how we can change the industry is actually not it's not inventing something new. It's not reinventing the wheel. The technology that we need to adopt right now, and the work methods that we need to adopt right now, have been on this planet for at least 100 years.
Yeah.
We were talking about prefab housing. I get muddled whether it's Hoff or Huff, but it's a German prefabricated company, have been making the most fabulous kick-ass houses since 1904, I think it is, or early 1900s. And yet in this country, you talk about prefab houses, they think you're talking about a donga.
Yeah,
you know, it's just completely bizarre.
Lifted off on a crane.
New Zealand is far more ahead than us.
Yeah.
They understand insulation because, everybody thinks that New Zealand is a cold country. Well, yes, it is. But in Central Otago, it can go over to 40 degrees in the summer and then minus 10 in the winter. How are you supposed to build for that sort of thing? That's how we should be building here.
Yeah.
We should be building so that when it gets to 5 degrees in Noosa in the summer, in the winter, and it's now 37 degrees today, that our houses inside are about the same temperature all year round. And it's possible. It's doable.
Just because it's prefab, it doesn't have to be boring. Like some of the prefab homes they're doing over in Europe are absolutely incredible. And
New Zealand. New Zealand is a groundbreaker as well.
I think a lot of people get scared by it because they feel like prefabricated's going to limit their options, limit their finishes, limit the size.
And
but
Canada is a huge prefab market as well. And again, we go back to why did these Scandinavian and cold climate countries adopt this method, is because you don't want to stick somebody out that's going to get frostbitten in minus 15 degrees. Well, equally in Australia, you don't want somebody to fall off a sticky, slimy, sweaty ladder at 37 degrees after he's got, he's burnt his skin to the point of having skin cancer, and then falls off a ladder and breaks his leg.
Yeah.
These sorts of things don't have to happen in this country if we just start looking at it in a different way. It's not reinventing it. It is looking at the expertise of everybody that's been before us.
Yeah.
Start looking at these things right now, and you'll start changing this country very quickly.
And not only that, I feel if there was more time, money and energy invested into those types of things, like the cost of building in Australia is just getting out of control.
It is.
And I think prefabricated could help a lot of that. Like
Yeah.
for a start, you're in a building, so you're not worried about the weather.
That's right.
You can have all your staff, trades, everybody in-house.
You can get right up to second fix without even going to site. This is
Yeah.
the thing that I think that people get confused about. But what it does amplify, again, communication,
Yeah.
written, drawings, go over and over them. I've said to clients, I don't care how many times or how long we spend planning, but as soon as we finish planning, we're building.
Yeah.
We're not having builders variations and oh, by the way, we'll change this now. You know what they do on all those stupid television shows. This doesn't happen on my watch.
I love it.
We plan, then we build.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's how it should be.
Exactly.
Like when you have a good system, good process, a good team. I think that, like the important part of this is a good team.
And the team, you can have all the best team players in the world, but again, it's a communication within that team,
Yeah.
and it's also how you impart that communication from the team to the outer world.
Do you I'm not sure if you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but do you, like through your process, do you ever find that you, after a certain amount of time or even after the initial meeting, it could be that you can't work with a client?
Yes.
And so how do you, like, because I know builders struggle with this, and I think builders need to take more power with this, and like a lot of builders feel they need to take, well, they're in a position where they're not really making any money, they have to take on every job, but it's actually very empowering to decide, hang on a minute, we're not probably going to get on different.
There's a practical stumbling block on that.
Yeah.
Is that most of my career, most builders' careers, most architects' careers, there are not that many rich architects, I can tell you. They really work for their living. So for them to actually turn away a job that could look on paper to be lucrative, then you just sort of say, well, you're sitting around waiting for another job. You could have taken that one. So there's always that fear, is that I might not get another job, which is the same thing that I've had all my career, is so that you do actually have to take on jobs that you don't want to. But the other thing about it is that when you recognise that you can't work with somebody, there are ways that you can turn that around. And again, it all comes down to communication, talking more about them. It's very often in the first communication or client meeting that I have, I'll talk quite a long time about, what food it's not cliched like that, but you
get to know them.
Restaurants, food.
Yeah.
What does your kid like doing? It's not a formula.
You're building that relationship.
It's a natural progression of how you would just meet a new friend. And I've said to my team, and I think this is a very helpful one as well for new builders particularly, is talk to the builder, talk to the client as though you've been friends with them for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because you would have a completely different attitude to the types of questions, and also the honesty. The honesty will come out if you think that you know them already. If you're trying to impress them and so say the things that you think that they want to hear, that's coming off straight away on a very insincere base, and then it's harder to turn it back into reality later.
Jeez, you're just dropping gold nuggets one after the other today. No, that's fantastic. So, like, what's your ideal client? Like, how do you attract your client?
Well, I don't know if I do. I mean, they sort of fall in sometimes, which is fantastic. But we've got a lot of repeat clients now because, given how long we've been in business, you'd hope for the best. But amazingly, we have about 65 to 70% repeat business. And I've said to my team, how many times in your life do you need an interior designer? Well, apparently more than once, which is really good for us.
That says one thing about your business.
Yeah, so we often have clients that I've done 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs for, which is fantastic for various reasons. Not because they just keep changing houses, but they might have a business or their daughter's place or something like that, and it becomes, very much a relationship that goes well beyond the client company designer relationship. But how they come to us, it's funny, we do get referrals, but not as many as you would hope. I remember when we did our first website, which was probably 20 something years ago. And I remember saying, as if anybody would get an interior designer on the web, why would anybody look for that? They need to see them, touch them, look at them, sort of thing. But we get a lot of new business from the website, because we try and make the website as comprehensive as possible so that they really get to know us as people before they come along.
Yeah.
So that in itself, when you're sort of saying, do you have people that that you can't deal with or can't work with? A lot of that falls away because they don't want to come to us, because they would probably recognise something in how we project ourselves as a company and how we work that goes, no, that they're not for us. So luckily I don't have to sort out the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, very often. But I still take on clients that I think are challenging, much to to our team, like this. But most of the time it works out, because if I'm not getting on with them very well, there's always someone else in the team that is brilliant at communication for people that I'm just going to go.
So how many's in your team?
Well, we had 10. Then I've never liked 10. It was like being on a hamster on a wheel. You're just constantly running, trying to feed this animal that you've created. So then we went down to 8, and we were at 8 for a long time. But then I think that realistically, it's not so much that I've got to a point that I don't have to prove anything anymore, but I just think that I wanted to tighten it up to a point that I didn't feel constantly worried about keeping the team happy, well employed, occupied, sort of thing. And the other thing is that what also makes you be able to reduce the team is how you stream it. So our processes, policies, procedures, how we have a weekly meeting that we go through every job. We also have a daily catch-up. There are things like that just become second nature to the team. So we're flowing a lot better. So you don't need all those people. Yeah. So I'm now down to 5. I could not go down less than 5. That would be a disaster. Yeah. But 5 is a really good number. I liked it when we had more people because we could sit around and drink after work more. But, apparently that's not what we're supposed to do. But having 5 is really cool. 5...
Are they all interior designers?
No, I've got a design coordinator who's been with me for 26 years. Yeah. She is the eyes and ears. She's the brainchild behind the company. I can say to her, what was the corrugated bloody whatever it was that we put on Joe Bloggs's roof or gutter or sofa. Yep. It was 15 years ago, and she just comes straight out and she tells you exactly where you've been. So she's brilliant, and she really is my right hand in more than one way, because I am left-handed, so she has to be my right hand. Then I've got a draftsman interior designer who does wholly and solely all of the CAD, but I can draw in scale just because that's how you used to do it without a scale rule. So I'll do all of the designs and then hand them to her, and then she works them up into proper drawings. And she also does a lot of collaboration with the trades, and does a lot of site meetings and so forth with them. And then I've got a design assistant who's brilliant. She's studying her interior design degree, and she's absolutely enthusiastic, fabulous, love her. And then we've also got an admin stroke finance manager. But we also, in order to get down to 5, which was very tricky, it takes a lot of working out to make sure you can get down to that without, shooting yourself in the foot, is that we get most of our financial work done outsourcing. Yeah. And a lot of people have said now that they'll outsource their drafting. But to me, it's such a personal, integral part of what we do that for me to hand it to, a contractor, I think that you're going to lose something in translation, in my opinion.
It's your baby. Like you got to see it through.
So we collaborate very closely together so that none of my vision or even notes I've missed. Yeah. So that's how we do it.
I think that's really important.
It's very tight. 5 is as tight as you're ever going to get.
And so are you taking your jobs through and doing the building work, or are you working with other builders?
Well, I work with other builders because realistically I'm structured as a design company, not as a building company, even though we're a registered building company. Yeah. And I'm a builder also in my own right, as well as the building company. And, the cabinet making business that we have as well, Resident Hero, that also has to be a registered building company as well for the types of work that they do.
That sounds super, pretty exciting. So you're juggling a lot of balls.
Yeah.
Like, because you're saying before, your cabinetry business, you send joinery all over Australia, New Zealand,
Yeah.
like you name it. So
Yeah, all over. It's fantastic. Now run by my son, our son, who's just a genius. He's brilliant, and he works like the clappers.
yeah,
He's on the computer at 5 a.m. He's still in the spray booth, because there's more stuff to be done. So he'll just don the
yeah,
PPE, and he'll be jumping in the spray booth until 6, 7 o'clock at night. So he really works very hard. But what he's done is he's built the business up to much more than it was when we first started.
yeah. Did you start that to try and keep more quality control and be able to have more say over what you do?
The other thing was, because I'm trained in furniture design, I was designing very basic, simple pieces of furniture, but you couldn't get them in Australia back in the day. And the other thing is bearing in mind that the clients that we have will be flitting off to hither and thither, in Europe or America or whatever, see these things and expect to have it in Australia without realising that, hey, there are 350 million people in the US. That's why you can buy a sofa for $2,000 over there.
Yeah.
You can't do that over here because we don't have the economy of scale.
Yeah.
So by virtue of me wanting to do something for them that was different, that you couldn't get, because there were only 5 wholesalers in the whole country when I started, we started designing and making furniture. So my husband started making furniture actually in our garage.
Yeah.
Then we progressed to a shed, then we had a bigger shed, then we built a custom factory that we combined the studio. So now we're all under the same roof.
And this is all in Noosa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the industrial estate. So, but the guy that has in the Colorbond ad, he's sitting and then he's just like admiring his roof like this. I still do that when I walk out. I just can't believe that we've done it, because that was a huge, very terrifying part, and that nearly killed me as well, is designing, building the factory, the studio, selling the other studio, selling the other 2 factories, and literally moving the factory from one on Friday to restarting on the Monday without any break. It was, and then the day that we moved into the studio, I broke my foot in 3 places and I was in a wheelchair. So
you're
that
a
was going
go-getter.
to send me over the edge.
And then on top of all that, like we keep talking about this magazine. Tell us a little bit about. So you've got this magazine called Inspired.
Yeah, because it was called Henshall's Inspired. Henshall ' is inspired.
Oh, I'd love to know more about this, because I read in the editor's letter, I think it is in the front of it, that you started this when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And like so many people when COVID hit just hit the brakes, stopped, slowed down, and you've managed to start a magazine.
I know, it sounds bizarre, but I mean, I've got some really fantastic friends. They're dynamic, and one of them, she's a keynote speaker. And in 2019, she did 106 gigs in 14 different countries. She's, worldwide sort of thing. So in 2020, when all of this happened, no one knew what was going to happen. I actually, because I'm like Pollyanna, I thought it would be all over by June, and this is back in March. And her business went from 106 gigs to 0 overnight. She's got a little kid, she's got to have mortgage, all of those sorts of things. And then I'm, sympathising with her, and then I just thought, what the hell's going to happen to my business? Because no one knew. We immediately put all our team on 3 days. They were fantastic, they all agreed. We pulled everything back. We went on to the minimum repayments for everything, all of those sorts of things that, you should do when you're in a crisis. You shouldn't panic. And I think that by virtue of talking to one of my best buddies who just lost her business essentially overnight, it made me think, she cannot panic, I'm not going to panic. What we're going to do is set about some things that we can all do that's going to keep this thing afloat. All we've got to do is keep above water for a certain amount of time, and we'll get out the other side. And it's not the first time I've been through that, because we went through the GFC and the recession and all sorts of other rubbish that you've had to face. So this one, although it was a worldwide thing and it was very different to the economic crisis that we had, but I mean, there's been an ensuing economic crisis because of the pandemic. But with her, in her trying to cheer me up, she said, you know what, you should write a magazine. And I went, ha. I said, that's a joke. I said, I wouldn't know how to start. She said, you just give me some photographs. She said, I'll write it, I'll do it for you. So it didn't actually work out that way, but she did push me. She came up with a name, not Henshall Inspired, it was a different name then. I came up with a few of the ideas. She edited and sorted it all out, and then I wrote all the articles, and then we put it together. And that one took us 5 months to put together.
Yeah.
This last one, because I'm now a seasoned publisher, we did it in-house and it took us 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The quality of the content in there, and and obviously you show off a lot of your travel in there, and that's obviously part of your business and what you do.
It's more to share experiences that I think that other clients and friends, you know, and people that you meet, that they can connect with. Because a lot of the places that I write to, they're nothing, you know, unusual. It's just that it was my experience in that particular place. And also to see, you know, like Uluru, that one that I wrote about Uluru, was my first real understanding of how ancient and beautiful and priceless this country is. Because living on the you know, the rim of a country, you know, we misunderstand and don't understand or even acknowledge, you know, the history and the spirituality of this country is mind-blowing. And that was my first introduction to it, was when I went to Uluru, and it was so powerful to me I had to write it, and so that's why I wrote it.
I really love how in there you mention other designers, architects that you appreciate their work. Like, I think that says a lot about you and the type of person you are, that you acknowledge other people's work. Because a lot of people don't.
Well, I know, and that's really so sad, because that to me is myopic, you know. And again, it's sort of my way or the highway. The only way that we can grow as an industry, as individuals, as builders, as designers, as architects, as plumbers, is to learn by other people's stuff. And there is no new idea on this planet. Every drop of water that's on this planet was on the planet when at the time began. We haven't imported water from another planet. We also haven't imported any new ideas from anywhere else. All the ideas that we are using right now have been here forever. It's just our reinterpretation of an idea. It's a different spin on it. But you've got to see somebody else's idea to be able to turn it. It's not plagiarism. We're not sort of saying, oh, look, I think that I'm going to copy that. It's not. It's just it inspires. That's why I said Henshall's inspired, because I am inspired by other people, by places, by food, you know, by buildings.
You talk a lot about food in there.
Yeah, well, I could eat non-stop 10 hours a day. I would be very happy. And for the other 14, I'd talk about it.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. So what's your goal for the magazine? Like, is it?
Well, again, you know, it's funny. People say, what are the goals for the company? What are the goals for this? What are the goals for that? And it sounds very insipid. It doesn't mean to be, but I genuinely have not had a goal for the company. My goal when I started the company was just to put food on the table, keep a roof over our heads, and also I felt that I had something to offer to people that wasn't available. And even the structure of our company is very different to others. You know, we design houses from the ground up, and factories, gyms, offices, whatever, right down to the teaspoons. So, you know, one day I'm looking at an OG part of a gutter, and the next thing I'm talking about, you know, the stainless steel content in a teaspoon or frilly curtains in someone's window. I mean, you've got to know a lot about a lot of things. But there are very few companies that you can come to from concept right through to putting spoons in the drawer. Yeah. And I think that's sort of, including the cabinetry. So the other thing is that because I design a lot of cabinetry, I don't want any cabinet to look like somebody else's. So when clients see, they'll see a picture of something that I've done. That's what I want. I'll say, okay, well, I'll design it for you.
My interpretation.
Yeah. So it's never a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see how passionate you are. Like a big part of why I love what I do, and I'm so passionate. Like I love that I get to build someone's home. Yes. Something
so that's spiritual in itself.
Yeah. And I love that you touched on it before, and I didn't appreciate the design until I started getting more involved in all the early stages. But you touched on it before, how a well-designed house creates a home.
Well built.
And it changes your life.
Yes.
Like when you live in a well-designed home with good ventilation, natural light.
That's right.
One thing that until I started sitting at meetings and hearing this getting spoke about, I took it for granted, but storage. Like, so many people want to build a new home, and I don't know if it gets overlooked or whatever, or people don't ask
It
the
does.
question, but like asking people even what's your hobby? Where are you going to store
That's
your
right.
paddleboard? Where are you going to store
Yeah.
your push bikes?
Yeah, I ask all
and-
those questions because it is so fundamentally important. A lot of what we do is renovation, and renovation largely has to do with reconfiguring a space to make it work for the people that are living in there.
Because it's not already.
Because it's not already, because
Yeah.
it was either badly designed or their circumstances have changed or they inherited it from another owner, all of those things. But storage is a big one. Actually, in that magazine, I've said storing is boring.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people collect so much crap in their lives that they really don't need.
Yeah.
You know, and if you haven't looked at it for 5 years and it's not an heirloom,
You shouldn't have it. Yeah.
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 But I do think that
But when you live in a house that does have the storage, the kitchen functions, the
Yeah.
bedrooms are where they need to be,
Yeah.
the house, like you want to have people over, you want to
Yes.
entertain, you
Yeah.
want to, you feel healthier, you feel
Yeah.
happier, you don't mope around. Like it I cannot believe how much I've learned from good design. And I look back now and I think of some of the houses I built in my earlier days, and I was like, how do people live in that? Like,
well, it's funny, you know, when you touched on that, is that I've always said, and I will stand by this, if I've designed a kitchen for a client, you don't have to ask me anything. I can design the rest of the house, because as soon as I know how to design their kitchen, I've got enough on them to do the rest of the house without asking them any more questions.
because the kitchen's where they
The
live.
kitchen is the heart, and there are so many stories that it imparts. It is exactly, how do you live? How do you function? Are you OCD? Are you messy? You know, all of those things.
Yeah.
Do you like cooking? Do you eat takeaways? But the thing about it is that actually is building up a story of a person, not just a space.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most integral thing, is that if you can design a kitchen that's perfect for someone, you can design the rest of the house without any more conversation.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that you describe it as a story, because you're really, if you don't find out about a person or a family and how they operate, how can you design a home that's going to suit them?
That's right.
Like it's
right.
really, really powerful stuff. So,
And interviewing children, sorry, that's another thing. I'll often ask the kids, what is it that you want? And it's funny, they will tell you what they want. And
do you get the parents looking at you like, don't ask them, we got to pay for this?
I love it, because it's, you know, I mean, parents now listen to their children a lot more than they used to do back in the day. But I think it's great, because it also means that they're going to respect their space better, because they had a hand in it. And that's
awesome.
the other reason why I think that the more you have the client included in the design process, they are going to be more accountable for their own actions and movements in that space that you've designed for them, because they feel like they designed it themselves anyway.
That's awesome.
They don't even know that I've done it. They just think, okay, I did a good
you're not
job.
just giving a kid a bedroom, you're actually
Just
getting them involved.
Totally.
And,
Yeah. I've got 2 teenage ones I'm doing early next year, and they're so excited.
Yeah.
And we just designed one for a little boy in New Zealand, and it's going to have this interactive wall where you can actually touch things, and turns lights on and stuff like that, and constellation in the ceiling, and then from his bunk he's going to have this slide that he just slides down to meet all his mates. So it's that's what he wants. He's going to love it.
He'll remember that. He'll talk about that for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
Like that'll
It'll
help.
change his childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is unbelievable. Like you've got so much experience. I think it's fantastic. But I'm sure you've had some challenges in our industry, like being female.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to talk through some of them?
I think I don't want to be a downer on it, but as I said at the beginning, it is a man's world, and I think that the reason I'm saying it's a man's world and the females that are coming into the industry have to accept that is that I didn't understand that. I thought that everyone was equal, and that we would all talk like normal human beings to each other without realising that this sort of patriarchal, misogynistic, I hate that word, but it's true, talking down, what would you know, I was young, I looked stupid, I maybe didn't know the difference between one screw and another nail or whatever, but realistically, does that actually matter? That's why I'm employing you. This is how I want to design, and I know that I can build it this way, so please help me.
Yeah.
But it was this kind of, well, if you don't know the difference, why are you talking to me about it? That sort of attitude. And that has happened. It still happens a little bit, but not as much. But I think that the challenges have been, a lot of them been financial. Financial challenges. There is such a fine line between making a profit and a loss in this industry, as you know.
Yeah.
And the worst part about it is that if you're going to lose money on a job, it's usually at the end, which is where you actually were going to take the profit.
Yeah.
So the profit coming out of the last 10-20%, say it's 20%, and somebody decides not to pay you, or there's a dispute, or something goes wrong, your profit's just taken straight up. The other thing is that what we've now got to contend with is that, you know, copper and steel and plaster and tiles and porcelain and everything's just gone pa-ching out through the window with pricing, and you're still stuck on fixed price contracts. That's when communication comes in very big.
Yeah.
So
Understanding a contract, executing a contract,
yeah.
communicating a
So
contract.
communication, and I think that in the early days, and still to a lesser degree now, I still find it hard to have those hard conversations with clients. I don't like talking about money, but realistically, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about money, but we have to be strong in our conviction of what we know is right, and just say to the client, I know that this is painful for you. It is equally painful for me to tell you, but this is how it is. And you know, the catchphrase of the pandemic is, it is what it is, but that in fact is probably the best phrase to do. Is it is what it is. We can't change this, we just have to accept it. You can fight about it, but that's how it is. And so the challenges that I've had that I haven't been able to say that. So financially, too scared to ask a client for more money, too scared to talk to the bank because I need a bigger overdraft, you know, too scared to tell a supplier that I can't pay them till next month. All of those things, they build up and they cause a lot of anxiety. And we were talking before about mental health in the building industry. And I think that I'm talking as one individual, but I know that I'm talking on behalf of a lot of people that have the same anxiety as me about all of those things. Talking to bank managers, talking to suppliers, talking to clients, lack of communication with their own team, frightened that they're going to look like an idiot in front of someone. All of those things, they're not just peculiar to me. Everybody has that at some point. And I think
sometimes holding back on those conversations, like, you can make yourself so sick, and it can really just be a simple phone call and a little bit of a conversation.
I've got a young builder that works with me at the moment. He's absolutely adorable. I love him. I've seen him since he was a little kid. He grew up with my son, and he has phoned me many times asking, you know, for advice on something, or how do I say this, and I'm too scared. And he's had sleepless nights. And I said, you know, you've got to ring me before you have the sleepless night, because everything that he's going through, I've been through 100 times. And I could stop him in his tracks by having this anxiety that is literally causing him such mental anguish, which then has a knock-on effect. He's got 2 little kids and a wife, and they don't understand that he's tossing and turning every night because he's worried about having a conversation with someone. And I just say, mate, just do this, it'll be sweet, you know. And sometimes it isn't, but I've got to try and calm him down. And I think that's, again, comes back to communication. Builders essentially are usually on their own, and they're usually at the top of their chain. So all of the subbies, they're under them, so they can't be seen to be weak or stupid or vulnerable or all of those things. And that is what increases the anxiety, and that's when the mental health thing kicks in. And then the next thing, they're having suicidal thoughts, so they haven't spoken to anybody.
And so much of that can be resolved by getting involved in those early stages, building a relationship before you go to a contract. Like, the amount of builders that price work up, might meet the client 1, 2 or 3 times, and they're signing a contract for hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's no personal connection there. You don't get to understand the client's values, their interests, like how they're going to react to certain things.
Well, I call it builder's bedside manner. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever met a surgeon or some doctor that's sort of standing. They don't have a good bedside manner, a lot of them, but they're brilliant at what they do. And I think that builders are like that as well, to some degree. Builders are brilliant at what they do, but they have to understand that you have to have a bedside manner. You've got to talk the talk with the same parallel as the client that you're dealing with.
My big thing is stepping out of a mindset of being a builder. Like, you have to be a business owner. Like, when someone asks you what you do, like, we've done a lot of work in our business in Live Like Build with a lady called Nicole Hatherley. She's an incredible woman, but she's very, very good at getting you to understand like why you're doing what you're doing. Like obviously you're a builder, but you're more than a builder. Where's it come from? Like where's the passion come from? Where'd the interest come from? And a lot of the time, or on top of that, what's the purpose? And like when you can figure those things out, when someone asks you, what do? You like, depending on your business, you can say, oh look, I actually build incredible sustainable homes, or I focus on my clients. Like the client experience is the biggest thing to me. Like it doesn't have to be focused at a builder, and when you change your mindset, it can really help that communication side of things.
I think I've said this to my team a lot over the years. We are so lucky to be in this industry, because how many other industries do you know that you can start with a pencil sketch on the back of an envelope, literally, and a few months or a few years later, it's created a building that someone is living or breathing or working in.
Yeah.
There are very few industries that you get that opportunity.
That's why I love it.
It's brilliant.
I love the fact that when I meet a person, they're at a point in their life where either something's not working, or they might have been successful so they can improve their lifestyle, whatever it may be, but you're taking them from that point where they are now, putting it all on paper, and then handing them over the keys to a home. Like I think that's my big thing. Like we like to say, we don't build houses. Like we actually, our houses are homes from the day they get moved into, and I think that's from good design.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
but the other thing is that I get just as much a joy when I do a commercial job. We had a derelict building up in Mackay, 600 square metre derelict building, absolutely almost, and it just had a heritage overlay on the face of it, just on the gable end. And I spent a lot of time interviewing a lot of the team. There were 40 people in the team, and like, what do they want? Of course, everybody's got something different. And a job of a designer, realistically, is to be the conduit between. That's what the client wants. Bring it out, and there's the reality. That's how it should be. But that part of that conduit is to understand and distill what you've heard, but to get 40 different disparate versions of what they want in this place,
and then interpret it all.
And interpret it. That's the skill.
Yeah.
But when at the end, when they see it and the joy, and 2-3 years later, and you still, I've got a phone call 3 months ago from one of them saying, I cannot tell you how much we love being in this building.
Yeah.
And it's their workplace, and that they're alive and conscious more in there than they are at home.
Yeah.
So workplaces are just as important.
Yeah, well, I guess, we don't do that sort of work, so I've never thought about it, but I guess that could be the difference between someone feeling like they love their work and wanting to go there every day, rather than sitting in a little dark, dungy room.
And that leads me to another one of my passionate things is lighting. Lighting cannot be underestimated in any circumstances. And if you see, project houses, and they're just, they've got one little centre light and everywhere. A centre light in the kitchen. I still see new houses with a centre light in the kitchen. What the hell are they lighting up?
It's bare minimum.
They're lighting up some tiles on the floor, not the workbench.
Yeah.
It's so ludicrous. So lighting can literally transform a house. You could have exactly the same house and change the lighting, and you feel like you're in a different place.
Yeah. Do you do the lighting design?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my big loves.
Like lighting is sometimes a difficult thing for us. Like a lot of the time, it's not. The lighting plans aren't really what they need to be, and it's and you actually touched on it before, like from a female point of view, like PowerPoints for lamps, and like because I think electrical, actually, even just PowerPoints and things, it is something that does get overlooked a lot of the time, because it's one of the things on our jobs that a lot of the time when the client's we do a pre-walkthrough before we start the rough-in, and a lot of the time it's left up to the electrician. Like, there's not enough detail on drawings, and then you do your walkthrough, and it's like, so because I'm learning more, like I really, like we have our weekly meetings, and I'm saying to my clients now, like, in 3 weeks' time, we're going to have an electrical walkthrough meeting. Like, start having a look at the drawings, think about some of the furniture you're going to put in there.
Yeah.
So
I won't do an electrical or lighting plan without me putting the furniture in first on plan.
Yeah.
Because how the hell are you supposed to do a lighting plan if you don't know where the things are going?
Yeah, and I've learned that as well. Like
it's bed positions, and also, bed positions, even that, I could carry on about lighting, but it is so important. But that's not hey, have a think about it because we're going to have a walkthrough. that's one of the things that I just say, we've drawn it, we've designed it, we've talked about it, ad nauseum. Now we're going to build it.
Yeah.
Not, hey, come over a few weeks before we're going to do it, because that's when it all goes pear-shaped.
No, that's what I've learned to do, because we do get the odd plan that shows no furniture. And like you're 100% right. Like, how can you work out your electrical if you don't know where you're going to put your bed or your lounge or the bedside table?
And you know how hard it is to relocate a light, particularly, or even a PowerPoint after the fact. Yeah. It's just like, oh, for God's sake, even, do we have to go through this?
Like, couple of things we've got on our checklist now for our walkthroughs, like these days, a lot of people are having robot vacuum cleaners. So you've got to have a charging point, or they might have a stick vacuum cleaner. Like, where do you want that? Like, does that need to go in the cupboard?
So you need to put a PowerPoint in the broom cupboard.
Yeah, and
stuff like that.
To me, those should all be pretty standard things that come through in electrical and joinery drawings now, and a lot of the time they're overlooked.
I know.
And it is, so we sort of try and take that responsibility to at least give the owner a bit of a chance to say, hey, let us know what you got, what you've had, and we try and talk them through it. But and look, we sort of try and only do work for one or two designers and architects now, because they do have incredible drawings. And again, knowing what I know now, like, I'm a huge believer now that clients should spend more money up front, because if you get all the documentation right, our job's a lot easier. We can price it a lot better. Yeah. But everybody knows what they're getting.
Well, in our company, for instance, the job that we did in New Zealand, well, we've done a few jobs in New Zealand, but one of them just comes to mind, is that the house itself was designed by a very reputable architectural firm in New Zealand. But then we came in and had to do all of the lighting, cabinetry, finishes, schedules, all that. We did 89 drawings, and the schedule of finishes went on for 60 pages. Yeah. And that's after the house has been designed. Yeah. So, but then once it got going, bam, 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 and then it all came out exactly how we wanted it at the end. Yeah. And I mean, that sounds a bit cocky saying that, didn't have to think about anything during the build, but if you iron out the major things so that you're not having to relocate, particularly wiring or plumbing, plumbing you couldn't anyway, but to relocate midway through a job, that is so stressful for everybody concerned. Yeah. Forget the money. It's just the whole concept of it is just
I think
too
clients,
horrible.
And again, it's not the client's fault. Like, they don't, Amelia does a lot of this with her homeowner community, like educating them on, like, she actually has drawing lists that people should be asking for as at least a minimum when trying to choose an architect or designer, because and again, a lot of it I think does come down to price. Clients look at the bottom line and think, oh shit, why is there so much different in pricing here? But it's no different to, like, everything, you get what you pay for. And if you pay for a set of drawings that's really cheap and you get 8 pages, you're probably going to have a stressful build. There's going to be a lot of decisions on the fly.
Well, there's another side to that as well. You can get an architect and say to them, we've got a $4 million budget, and he comes along with these fantastic drawings. The client quite rightly believes that what he's drawn is worth around $4 million, and then the price comes back at 8. So what does the client have to do? Go back to the drawing board, literally. Yeah. And I find that is not a good duty of care.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. And
that's another thing, is what we do is when we first get plans that we look at, and I can, thankfully see it from 1,000 pages, what this is probably going to cost. Yeah. And I'll just say, do you have a budget? There's a cheaper, easier way of doing this. If we, one house, we shaved off 300 millimetres off the whole thing, but because the house was something like 40 metres long, it shaved off
There's a lot of cost.
Gazillion dollars off it. And they wouldn't have even noticed that there was 300 millimetres missing. So there are things like that we would do way before they start putting a shovel in the ground, Do
you, I like asking this question to designers and architects, do you keep records of what the jobs that you design cost, like the finish cost? Do you get it? Yeah. Because I think a lot of people don't do that, and that's why they end up in that situation. Like, to me, if a client comes to you and says, hey, I got a $1 million budget, you should have a portfolio of work that you can go, oh, look, here's some other jobs we did.
That's sort of hard to sort of say, well, this is one that we've done before, but
well, similar. Like, this is a similar job.
We can say that on a similar job
Yeah.
of yours, knowing that most of them are renos, not new builds, that this is going to cost you blah blah.
Yeah, because to me, data is overlooked in our industry.
And we will do an estimate for them based on a previous thing, and then we try and tally against that estimate when it comes into real figures.
Yeah.
But sometimes, for whatever reason, it blows out. But that's not very often anymore. Thank
There's
goodness.
always especially renovations. It's just building. It's all until you actually get a set of drawings and you can actually sit down and cost it. It's very, very difficult. But when you have data from previous jobs, just as a guide to say to the client, look, if you've got $1 million, this is sort of the scope that we can sort of fit between.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of times. So that was what sort of really drove our pack process, like getting paid as a consultant, because I just, I actually haven't looked them up for a long time, but I know like 4 or 5 years ago, there was some stats done where it was something like 83% of drawings never get built because they're over budget. And so for me,
I would totally believe that.
For me, that's really horrible for clients, because the clients had to outlay time, energy, money. They've fallen in love with it.
Well, that instance that I just gave you was today.
Yeah.
That's what I just heard a client tell me today. He's devastated.
Yeah.
But, Frank Lloyd Wright, who was one of the most famous architects in the world, he only ever, less than half of the buildings that he ever drew were ever built.
Yeah.
And he was prolific. So there are other, huge architects like Mies van der Rohe and, a few of the others, that they designed thousands of places and only hundreds were built, or even tens of.
Yeah, and
so it's
such
incredible.
a shame.
It's a shame. But I think that, that's the, again, I've just come back to it, it's a lack of communication. If they had better communication in the first place, they wouldn't have gone down that road.
Yeah. So we'll get, we're close to wrapping it up, but can we just talk about, we got introduced to you from Amanda from Awesome Women in Construction. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that. And
I can't remember, she must have approached me, but talk about a dynamic person. She's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because of where we are in Noosa, based in Noosa, I don't go to a lot of the gigs, unfortunately, but I think that her philosophy, her business model, her educational processes, all of the things that she's doing, marketing, promotional things, all of those things that she's trying to do to promote women in construction is groundbreaking for a start. It's absolutely fantastic. And I support her in any way that I can in my limited capacity. But she put in an article in the last magazine that we did, just to explain people, what AWIC was all about. I just think hats off to her. She's amazing. We're having another AWIC session up in our studio in February for AWIC, which will be great because, you get to know some of the women that go to these events, and they've all got brilliant stories. But, fantastic builders, and they've got, children with special needs and husbands that are, in mining, and they're running these corporations and building works, and it is absolutely fantastic.
I think being a mother is the hardest job in the world, and I think females that do that and then do what we do is we couldn't do it. Blokes just couldn't do it.
Well, what do they say about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers? Ginger Rogers did everything that Fred Astaire did except backwards in high heels. So who was the better one?
But it is, for those of you that haven't, may not have seen the podcast we did with Amanda, go and check it out. Awesome Women in Construction. She's, the things we're doing, or she's doing, and getting awards nights and charity events and golf days, everything that the industry has done
for men,
for blokes forever, she's now doing for females. I think it's absolutely fantastic. All right, Di, so just quickly before we go, we've started something new where our last guest has asked a question which I'm going to ask you, and then I'll get you to ask a question that we'll ask our next guest. So Sam was our last guy we interviewed. He said, what's one thing you're doing today to make you a better person, to improve yourself?
Well, this might be controversial, but I think it's what I eat. I am a vegan. I was vegetarian all my life, but I became a vegan last year because of listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
Oh, you should listen to some of them. And I think that, eating good food has such a knock-on effect of every part of your life, particularly physical and mental health. And as I said before, sitting around and eating hamburgers and donuts, your self-esteem is going to go down the gurgler, as well as your physical health and mental health. So I think that, just be very kind to yourself, and I try to eat really well.
Awesome. So what question you want us to ask the next guest?
Because we're talking about travel today, I'd like to say, if you could go anywhere in the world tomorrow, all expenses paid for a holiday, where would you go?
All right. I'm going to try and answer that one next time as well. Look, I really, really appreciate your time. I feel like we could talk all night,
I know.
but it's a bit bloody hot in the shed here.
It sure is.
You have dropped so many gold nuggets today. I think you've added heaps of value for everyone that's listening.
Thank you.
Is it possible for people to get a hold of your magazine if they want to?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Just get in touch with us. Just write to me, di@henshall.com.au or info@henshall.com.au. It'll all get there.
We'll put some links on the end.
We can send it to anywhere in the world, really.
Yeah.
Well, we do.
Yeah.
We send them to all our clients, because we've got a lot of clients abroad, of course.
Yeah.
So they love getting them.
No, well, look, keep doing what you're doing. You're an incredible woman. You were juggling a lot of balls, and it sounds like you're doing really well at all of them. So keep up the great work. And
thanks very much,
Yeah,
Duayne.
look forward to seeing you succeed, and keep going with what you're doing.
Good on you. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Everything discussed during the Level Up podcast with me, Duayne Pearce, is based solely on my own personal experiences and those experiences of my guests. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. We recommend that you obtain your own professional advice in respect to the topics discussed during this podcast.